Hello and welcome to the Breaking Muscle podcast. I am Pete Hitzman, host and managing editor for BreakingMuscle.com. The pursuit of health and fitness is as ever-changing as humanity itself, and Greg Walsh has devoted his life to leading that change in a meaningful direction. With a background as a BMX racing, punk rock listening counterculturalist, he's developed a unique ability to look at common problems and see uncommon solutions. Formerly a CrossFit box owner on the West Coast, Greg has honed his ideas into a system that now resides at Brigade Gym in Rochester, New York. Greg talks to us today about hammers, maces, positional accountability, what subversive fitness really means, and the importance of only doing the things that matter in the gym. I think you'll walk away with some brand new viewpoints on your own practice. If you have comments or questions for the show, go ahead and shoot us an email at editorial@breakingmuscle.com. Joining us today is Greg Walsh of Brigade Fitness in Rochester, New York. He has been writing a training program for us on Breaking Muscle, a daily training blog called Subversive Fitness, and he's joining us today to talk about his training philosophy, his fitness and coaching philosophies, and the change in conversation that he's bringing to the fitness world. Welcome, Greg. How are you?
Hi, great. Thank you very much, Pete. Thanks, man.
So I was one of the first articles you submitted to us was about a full-range kettlebell high pull, and I was the one editing that article, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's doing a kettlebell thing that nobody does this thing with a kettlebell. But we put it up and people liked it, and so we've kind of evolved into you have your own little corner sort of on Breaking Muscle with your Subversive Fitness program. Talk to us a little bit about the philosophy. Why Subversive Fitness?
Well, that phrase is something that originated with Wolf Brigade. So 2008, I moved back to Rochester from Long Beach, California, where we had CrossFit Long Beach from 2003 to 2008. And so when I came back here, I just kind of wanted to do something a little bit different. We'd been doing something different with our version of CrossFit out there. But just, physically and philosophically, it was just different than what I wanted to be doing. So when we came back to Rochester, we started Wolf Brigade. And the Subversive Fitness thing was just kind of a simple way to articulate our goals there. We really have a very similar but different outlook than most of what we see in fitness. We want to help people. We want to be great detailed coaches. We want to empower. But we're also not going to do the easiest thing because it's going to make the most money or because it's going to appease the group that we currently have. We want to do the best thing and then attract the people that want that thing. So the Subversive Fitness tag was just kind of a convenient way to phrase what we were up to. And then it worked perfectly for the Breaking Muscle thing. Anyone that doesn't immediately recognize the Wolf Brigade name, the Subversive Fitness thing, I think was a great choice to tag that program.
Well, and to call it subversive is very accurate, I think, because there are a lot of things that don't fit. You have a very big mix of things. Like you have front squats, you have just regular things, pick up something heavy, and then you're doing a thing with a hammer. There's all sorts of really unusual stuff that you would see maybe in a strongman competition, but the whole program sort of boldly refuses to fit into any template that really is out there.
Well, and I'm glad you think that. I also always am very specific to make sure people know that that's not for the sake of itself. We're not trying to be different. We're not trying to stick out or flip the script on something that doesn't need to be flipped. There are basic heavy barbell lifts in there because those are the best ways to get strong. We do them very detailed. We do them heavy, but we don't do them in attrition-based conditioning style sets. It's just never made sense to me. Even when we were at CrossFit, it never made sense to me. So we use them as what they're supposed to be, which is a strength movement. We do power clean as opposed to full clean because I've always felt that price versus cost, a full heavy clean takes more positional awareness and work than most generalists have or want. So if you can elicit 80% of response with 40% of risk, that's what we use the the governor as. With the mace and kettlebell stuff, the reason that we do more of that is we've found it to be extremely well insulating. We have very strong people. We have very few injuries. We have people that are transferring their physical skills to almost everything but fitness. We're not like we're not a place where people compete a lot in fitness. Some of our people do, and that's awesome, and they do great. But that's not our main goal. That's not our main group. So with the full range high pull, things like that, our evolutionary process with the kettlebell was a little bit different. I've been injured a bunch. I was a professional BMX bike rider, rode BMX my whole life.
Oh yeah, so you're injured just perpetually. Those guys get beat up constantly.
Yeah, you essentially just fall downstairs for fun and then figure out ways to do it again later. Yeah. So my right wrist had been broken twice. So as much as I worked for it, my front rack was not great. So it was just creating some imbalances and wasn't super useful for me. So I just really started detailing out how to lift kettlebells heavier, and then how to also measure percentages based on people's barbell lifts, so we can use those as both complements and supplements to those conventional lifts. So for people, you're not gonna front squat at 85% all week. So by the end of the week, maybe you're doing a kettlebell front squat at 40 or 50%. So you're still doing measurable, observable work, just different implement, pound for pound heavier implement. A double kettlebell front squat at 115 pounds is equal
really
to
hard.
A barbell. What?
It's really hard.
It sure is. It sure is. And in our opinion, our experience, we've tested it. It's there's another 50% on the bar there. So I mean, you're looking at for less overall reps, you're getting more work in. And then maces and hammers, man. First of all, they're just really, really fun. But second of all, they develop kind of an implement awareness that nothing else can. Something moving sideways at a high rate of speed is a lot different than something moving straight up and down right in front of your face.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of something I've noticed. So in one of my several lives, my brother owns a farm, and so I go up and help him with things on the farm. And I'm amazed at all of the people in my generation, because sometimes we'll have people, hey, I want to come help with something on the farm, because it sounds like a cool thing for a hipster to do, right? So I take some friends up there, and you'll hand them a pickaxe or a sledgehammer or something like that, and watch them try to swing. It's the funniest thing in the world, because they've never experienced this load on the end of a lever, how do you orient your body thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of what you're doing is sort of real life movement education as much as fitness.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And the load on the end of the lever is so valuable in stability and strength, that translates into things like martial arts, that translates into things like people with injuries, balancing that back side to side. We feel, and I mean, people may think I'm crazy, but we'll see, I guess. I really feel like the mace is one of the last kind of uncharted territories, one of the last kind of uncovered gems in real strength and conditioning, because it's always been by most used as some afterthought-y kind of gimmick movement. Meanwhile, in India, it's the primary strength and conditioning implement for these wrestlers, and these are just these skinny, well-conditioned dudes swinging these giant maces that are wrestling for 6 or 8 hours a day, and then plowing the wrestling field, and then going and doing their work. Man, there's something to that, And then the old time wrestlers from here, Carl Gotch and then Jake Shannon, the guy that introduced me to the mace back in maybe 2005 or so. They got it, but it was so hard to get off the ground. But I just wasn't going to give up on it, man. And done heavy enough, I believe that it's really just this uncharted territory. We've got some people that do really, really heavy mace swings, and it translates to everything, man. Their kettlebell lifting improves, their pull-ups improve, their bench press improves, and if you can manage 30 pounds on the end of a 3.5-foot lever, everything else in the world gets lighter, surprisingly.
Yeah, Well, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of conversation going on right now about the limitations of most common fitness regimes, right? So if you're a runner or a cyclist, you really only move forward. If you're a CrossFitter, you spend 99% of your time just moving up and down in various ways. What you're bringing in, even most kettlebell work is still very up and down, or it's a hinge, but it's not. You're never leaving that plane of movement. So you introduce things like maces and kind of unusual movement patterns, and you start to give the body a more well-rounded stimulus. What have you seen, having come from CrossFit and now into Wolf Brigade, which is constantly varied in a whole new way? What have you seen in terms of athlete outcomes across the board? Have injuries gone down from what you used to see, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so our gym in Long Beach was good. It was small to medium size when we were there, so we had a really great focus group. We had all the reasonable stuff. There was standout people, there was normal people. With Wolf Brigade, we've gotten lots and lots of really normal people, and we've gotten really good at building them into their best capacity. So they may not be a top tier competition style CrossFitter, but they can all identify a hinge versus a squat and apply it at load. They can all horizontal, vertical, push, pull. They can all throw and explode and move laterally and get their asses off the ground with weight. And that's that. So can they all barbell snatch their body weight? Absolutely not. Can they all do muscle ups? No. And who cares? So there's a lot of that stuff that, of course, is amazing and impressive and valuable in its own way. But to a generalist or someone that's coming from a compromised fitness background, fundamental strength and conditioning does not have to include certain things that it has been, I guess, shown to need to include. So we've basically omitted some things that we felt were becoming a standard that was either impractical or dangerous or unattainable. And it's not guessing. I've been doing this since 2002. And that's quite a while for this type of fitness. So we've omitted what I saw was the holes in the boat and filled them with other things. And one kind of experiment that we've seen is when we've seen people come in from CrossFit, which we get a lot of, they come in with a very completion-based skill set, a very completion-based mindset. And not nearly as much of a composition-based skill set or a composition-based mindset. And for those that maybe don't pick up what I'm laying down there, we'll just put it in terms of a push-up. If you're going to do 30 push-ups, for the most part, in a CrossFit environment, and again, we're painting broad strokes brush here. There are totally amazing CrossFits in the world, just like there are totally terrible CrossFits in the world. Same with restaurants, same with everything else. But in general, if you're going to do 30 push-ups at CrossFit, you're going to go as fast as you can. You're going to do those push-ups. Range of motion might change, mechanics might change, but you're going to get those push-ups done. Where we turn the dial back is each one of those push-ups is going to be great. The way that we make sure that's the case is we teach it initially. We make sure we're insulating it with midline stability and shoulder mechanics and proper positioning. And if it goes out the window, we have people scale it immediately so it's still valuable. And scaling isn't some wiggly, flailing mess. It's an exact positional correlate to what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. I think that's a big thing that's missing. Like you said, that's a big thing that's missing from most fitness systems or businesses or regimes. Like you're saying, that completion-based focus, mechanics end up going out the window a lot of the time. One of the things that really has been rattling around in my head for the last year or so is the idea of a technical max. Never going to an all-out, eyeballs busting one rep max, but just going until your technique starts to falter, and that's it. And that's all the further you need to go, because anything past that is reinforcing poor movement, and who wants that?
Well, I mean that's in my opinion that's forward thinking, and we test with the exception of something like a Turkish get up where one makes sense. We would test 2 rep maxes, because I mean, of course, a 1 rep max, and in a lot of contexts, especially competition and things like that, it's amazing and totally impressive. For us, the 2 rep max is more useful because it shows a real positional awareness, because you can do it once, but can you reset as hard as you possibly can and do it again? That's super valuable. That's a super valuable number, and it makes for more realistic program design in our opinion, because when you're putting percentages on it, you're not putting a percentage on something that you did once as your life depends on it. You know, it's a 2 rep max, which means you completed it to your instructor's satisfaction twice, safe enough to not die, and then when we're programming off it for the next couple months, those numbers have made a lot of sense.
My wife would love that. She always claims that she can't call a 1 rep max authentic unless she's done it twice. At first, I was trying to explain to her that's not a 1 rep max anymore. That's a 2 rep max. She said, I don't care. So she's famous for going and she'll do a heavy back squat and then take a minute and then go do the same weight again. And I'm like, well, we don't actually know what your max is, and she doesn't care. But she may be a lot smarter than I am.
Well, I mean, who knows? And again, we're painting with a broad brush, and
right.
Everything is a little bit different for everybody. But man, I've trained a lot of people, and I've trained with a lot of people, and what we've whittled down here, it's not demonizing a barbell snatch based conditioning workout with a muscle up and handstand push up, finisher. It's just saying that in my experience, that is not the most useful way to train an athlete for general use. For life-based use, people need power and speed and range of motion and all this kind of stuff, but they don't need it in as compromised positions as they've been told they need it.
Well, and so walk us through. We've kind of beat around the bush a little bit. Walk us through what does an average day for somebody walking into Wolf Brigade look like? I mean, your CrossFit gyms have kind of a formula. You walk in, you warm up, you get yelled at for a while, you cool out, and you leave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ours looks a lot like that. Less yelling. We're big on environment. I was very fortunate to start martial arts before I started strength and conditioning, so I came from that type of mindset. So patience and punctuality and kind of environmental respect and self-management and all those things. Those were really important components of our program. So things start on time. We have a daily and then a specialty warm-up. The daily warm-up goes through all the main movement patterns, and then the specialty warm-up is geared for the day. So we'll warm up a part of a position. If we're going to do something like heavy Turkish get-ups, we'll make sure and get some heavy walking lunges in there, get some halo extensions and some dowel pullovers and stuff to get everything going where it's supposed to. And then we reconvene, go over the training day, ask if anyone has any questions. People always do. And then we turn them loose and we pay attention to class the entire time. For those that have experience with both, Wolf Brigade would look a lot more like a martial art than a modern CrossFit class. Not in the sense that there's a bunch of people wandering around without shoes on and whatever, but just in terms of structure and timing, discipline, and things like that. I mean, we pay attention to class all the time, always, because it's crucial. The idea of turning people loose, turning the music up, and getting on Facebook for an hour is it makes no sense to me. If that's what you want to do, then there's probably a better job for you somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of athletes out there who are paying for something that they're not getting, and that's an unfortunate thing in our industry. And not to interrupt you, except that most of the ones that don't know that the other is out there. Right.
One thing that we run into a lot, and I think it's partially because I think there's a lack of understanding of why anyone that had the potential to be wouldn't be a CrossFit. So sometimes we get people that contact us asking questions about our program and things like that, and within that contact will be, is this like CrossFit or is this CrossFit? And we have a little section in our frequently asked questions that kind of covers that, but I don't know. We always make sure to say just because something is different doesn't mean it's worse. It's always good to come in and look to see if it's something that you would like. And for the most part, CrossFit has done an excellent job of making people want CrossFit. But the problem is, as you know, it's like the scale is so broad. I mean, there are phenomenal CrossFit gyms out there, and there are others that just are a disaster.
Yeah. Well, and even if you isolate coaching quality, right? Let's say you have 3 CrossFit gyms that all have excellent coaches and excellent programs. Depending on where you are as an athlete, depending on where you're trying to go, that gym may not match you, and so you're going to have a bad experience. If you're a competitive CrossFit athlete who's trying to go to regionals or is trying to improve their position at regionals, and you walk into Soccer Mom CrossFit, the athletes in there are getting exactly what they need. They're having a great time. Everybody's improving, nobody's getting hurt, but it's not going to help you any. So it's like you're saying, painting with broad brushes. CrossFit has made people want CrossFit, but at the same time, it can mean so many different things.
It's so true, and that exact philosophy is kind of why we wanted to rebrand and do our own thing. But also to the point you just made, if an athlete or a participant is instructed properly from day one and insulated with basic power and strength and positioning and conditioning, it will apply to all else. So yes, there will be refinements that need to be made to compete at a high level of CrossFit, but the foundation is there for those refinements. I mean, what we see is when people come in from other places, and then any type of other places, even kettlebell lifting gyms or even just generalist gyms, like a LA Fitness or something like that, the focus is the fun stuff. And then so something else that we do similarly but differently is we have a curriculum priorities list. So we actually have a curriculum that we take new people through before they start group class. They're not going to be great at everything. Some of the stuff they will have seen, some of the stuff they haven't. And it doesn't have to be great, it just has to be safe. So it just lets us watch them move, lets them get comfortable in the environment. If there's something to address positionally, we address it. If we get stuck somewhere, if someone just cannot squat, we got to make sure they can squat before we put them in a group that's going to squat. So when we're looking at that curriculum priorities, once people have established that they can run through that list safely, then you can really put them on any task that you want. Then you could teach someone, okay, great, let's do a handstand. Okay, great. If you can do a bunch of dead hang pull-ups and great push-ups, let's do a handstand push-up. But it's not the other way around. It's not let's learn to kip before we can hang from the bar for 20 seconds. That type of mindset. And again, it serves us well injury-wise, and just the proof has been in the pudding. Some of these really, and I keep saying normal in these air quotes, but these normal people that are new to strength and conditioning but have spent some time at Wolf Brigade, they're so brutal, man, and they just don't even know it because they haven't been anywhere else to see it. These people grab these maces that in any normal other gym would be like the holy grail mace, and I love it. I kind of shake my head and think, man, that's just position. These are not exceptionally strong people. They're just attentive and consistent, and that's it.
Well, and call it whatever you want. I mean, it's teaching people how to use their body. It's activating your central nervous system and knowing which muscles to tense and which muscles to relax. It's really basic stuff once you've been there. But if you're like most people who don't move at all, who do a lot of what we're doing right now, sitting at a desk in front of a computer all day, and then they'll go to a gym where they sit in a machine and move one thing for half an hour, and then you never really get to the point where you know how to actually move objects in space.
And what you said is you said basic, and while that is true, it's we always say simple, not easy, and it's
right.
even really strong, intelligent people that we see come in, and I'm sure I do it too. Is you're going to forget about what challenges you the most when you're challenged. So if you're loaded with heavy weight and you're good at 9 things and bad at 1, it's going to be that one thing that breaks down. That's the one thing that we have to focus on. So it is all basic, but it's tough, man. It's tough. It's more addressing the mindset of how to best train yourself, because most people have way more physical skills than they think they do. It's just the mindset and the concept of how to best apply that. Right. And that's something that I think we've gotten to an unusual level of proficiency at, is eliciting excellent response from even a very, very adequately physically equipped. So someone comes in with a really basic physical skill set, we are able to elicit very, very strong progress out of them based on attention to detail, insulating position, and just getting their minds right on the fact that they're way stronger than they think they are.
Right.
They're not as tired as they think they are, stuff like that.
You can do more than you thought. One of the things you talk about a lot is position. It's getting people into the right positions, teaching them the transition between those positions. And we talked before we came on air about positional accountability. Can you run through that concept and talk about how you implement it in your gym?
Oh yeah, thanks. That's smart. So, it's not actual science, but we have a positional accountability chart up in the gym. I post it online every couple months, but basically, when you've only been in the gym for a short period of time, the percentages of positional accountability change. They're largely on us because you're still learning. You're nervous. You're probably more tired than you will be very shortly. And so for example, within the first 3 months, positional accountability is 80% ours, 20% yours. So yes, you're responsible for paying attention, but we know you're going to make mistakes. So we got to cue into that and make sure that we're addressing it properly. Once you've been there 6 months, the percentage changes to whatever it would be, 60-40 or whatever we think, and then once you've been there for a year or more, then the scale flips and it's 80% yours and 20% ours, which means we're always going to watch you. We're always going to be paying attention and making adjustments as needed, but not overzealously. But in general, you should be able to move and transition between movements, stay hustling and conditioning, manage your breathing, keep your hands off your knees, replace implements in the place where they started. All those things. Once you've been in a place for a while, your responsibilities increase, and we handle physicality the same way.
Yeah, well, and it's codifying what should already be happening. In other words, somebody should be taking more responsibility and should be able to accept a greater percentage of what their fitness and what their movement is going to look like as they become more experienced. And it's not to say they don't need you anymore, but they should need you less. If we're doing our job as coaches, we should get our clients to the point where they are mostly self-guided missiles.
That was going to be next out of my mouth. Is most people want that. Most people, when they get to that positional accountability place, they're happy about it. They're proud. Mm-hmm. They're proud of that. So yeah, exactly what you said. If we're doing a good job, that's what they want. They want the eyes on them when they need it the most, but they don't expect it all the time. And that's kind of when the magic happens.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a very systems-driven and process-driven mentality in how you're running your business there, versus a numbers game. That a lot of the business now, in all forms of the fitness industry is numbers games. How many clients can I get in? What's my retention rate like? And you're looking at it from how can I develop people? How can I educate them? And how can I make sure that they continue to progress with my help over time to become the most efficient and happy and injury-free movers that they're ever going to be? And if they have athletic aspirations, then great. But if they don't, they're still going to be better human beings.
Yes, to everything you just said. Yes. Yep.
I don't suppose there was a question in there, was there?
Yeah. No. You phrased it easily as well as I could have.
So where does this go? I guess my question is where do you're coming up with something that's pretty unique, even if you're not trying to be unique for its own sake, you've stumbled on something that has removed some of the chaff from the functional fitness community. Where does
Yep.
it go from here?
Please don't take this as contentious. We didn't stumble on it. I've been meticulously honing this thing for a very, very long time. I saw it because with a background in action sports and then also kind of a background in underground culture with hardcore music and things like that, I've always seen a real need for fitness that didn't present just like every other thing. So while the mindset of doing something that looked and felt different was there, I knew that it had to be insulated with the best possible information and no gimmicks in order to make any type of splash or any type of interest from high-level fitness. So when we started retooling it, and again, a lot of that was just adaptation based on my injuries and things like that. We knew that we had to standardize some things. So the curriculum is a big deal. Where it's going has a lot to do with what you just mentioned, which is the standardization. We could put our kettlebell program into any type of interested facility anywhere by standardizing how we teach the movement, giving them the percentages of the conventional lifts that we use in the kettlebell lifts, testing things, and then putting them on paper, like just basically how many times and how much weight can you kettlebell clean from the floor to your chin. Once we have that number, we know how we can progress off that number. People very seldom test that type of thing at that type of weight because they leave that for barbell lifts, they leave it for conditioning measurements. But when it comes to where we're going and standardizing the process, we have to change our mindset a little bit on what we're standardizing if we're going to change how we apply it to a general group. Mm-hmm. So if the barbell snatch has become the flagship for your testing, and not everyone can adequately perform that, that's not a problem of the participant, that's a problem of the process. So what we've done is whittled down to where we could apply our process to individuals anywhere that want to get stronger and are willing to address basic positioning and then advance that to the high level positioning. And we've practiced it. We've got people that are applying our program in a lot of different places in very small doses right now. We will have Wolf Brigade chapters, which will be essentially places that are applying little pieces of our puzzle. We're never going to expect anyone to do everything exactly the way that we're doing it because every gym is different. All clientele is different. And like you mentioned earlier, you know, there's I guess, what did you say, soccer mom CrossFit? There's soccer mom CrossFit, and then there's places that are really competition geared. But regardless of the demographic, they all need to know how to push, pull, sit, squat, hinge, throw, explode. So once we get them there, then the adaptations would be whatever that gym dictates is best for them.
Who is this not for? Like, this sounds like you've created this thing that's basically for anyone. Is there a type of client or a type of athlete or a type of person, I guess, who just is not a good candidate for a Wolf Brigade system?
That's a phenomenal question, man. That's the first time I've ever been asked that question. And I'm always I'm always hesitant to articulate my feeling on this because it sounds big-minded or arrogant. But I truly believe that properly applied, this program can improve any athlete walking the face of the earth. And trust me when I tell you that I understand that there are athletes with extreme capacity. And I mean, I've competed in martial arts. Action sports is obviously different, but I've done very, very physically demanding things my entire life. I've trained with very high-level people, and I know that that's a tall statement. But everyone has a hole in the boat that details can improve. And everyone is missing details. I sure as hell am. But a lot of times they're ignored because a lot of times they're not identified. And I think that's one of our main standout points is that we make identifying the missing details a priority, not an afterthought.
How do you talk about your process for that? So there are all sorts of different systems that people will charge you a lot of money to learn, like the functional movement screen and things like that.
A lot, so much money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody's got to pay their bills and buy their yachts.
I'm not really criticizing. I'm not really criticizing the charging for it. But man, sometimes I think about the price tag and I think about that information had better be really, really good.
Absolutely. And so far I've been pretty fortunate to not walk out of a seminar going, why did I spend that money?
Yeah.
But I know people who it's happened to. They've come back and gone, I can't believe I just spent 3 days of my life that I'll never get back. But you have a process at your gym for identifying those weak points. Can you talk about what your process is for that?
Well, I mean, it was definitely simple but not easy, and most of it has been really just hands-on training at every kind and quality and I guess limitation of athlete over the last 12 whatever years, 12, 13 years. And then something else that's been a gigantic piece of that puzzle is dealing with fixing myself after injuries, learning what movements need to be adjusted in order to accommodate what limitation or injury recovery, and then applying those at different loads, applying them at different speeds, and seeing what holds up and what doesn't. So when we get an athlete with a compromise somewhere, we're going to fix it, insulate it, and then test it. So once we've done that enough times, and once we've seen, everyone's different of course, but like once we've seen enough similarities, then we know it's something that we can apply to the group. And then I've done the same thing with myself. I've had two back surgeries. They both did not go as well as I would hope. In 2009, I had one that was stupid, and then in 2012, I had a spinal fusion. The spinal fusion, they usually say, there's like a 15% chance of return to normal athletics, or where they give you some bleak statistic, and I wasn't buying any of that. So the fusion went fine, but the doctor touched a nerve in my leg, and my left big toe does not fire like the right big toe. So basically now what I have is one unstable foot, which to a martial artist and a strength and conditioning athlete is a disaster. Because you essentially think about poor force distribution every single time you take a step. How do you navigate that? So the last 3 or 4 years, I've spent a gigantic amount of time figuring out that, and that has helped me train people in ways that I can't even explain. So I mean, hands-on with people has been the primary mover in that process of evolution, and then I've had shoulder injuries, so I've figured out a lot of different kettlebell positioning that keeps you in really great external rotation that allows for kind of the second priority, but a cool bonus is that it allows for more weight because it keeps the kettlebell closer to you, and it takes time off the lift. So other people have been the biggest help, but fixing myself has been something that, although it's been like a really tedious pain in the ass and painful and annoying, I believe that I can help anyone in the world with low body stability issues gain as much stability as their body is capable of.
Well, there's no substitute for being there, right? I've had my own, own going through the gauntlet with various injuries, low back stuff, and shattered collarbones, some other things. But there's no substitute for having been in that trench. There's one concept that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I want to kind of flesh that out a little bit. Is insulating a weakness? So, say you have somebody who just perpetually knees cave in on a squat, as a very common, for instance. And there are a whole bunch of different exercises you can get them to activate their glute medius and pull those knees back out so they track correctly in their squat. Is there something beyond that you do when you talk about insulating a weakness?
So that's smart too, man. And I'm not sure if what we do is any miraculous discovery. And we call it adaptive non-science, because basically what we're doing is we're taking different implements and different, even mindset strategies and stuff to get people to move the way that they're quote unquote supposed to. But from what you said, and just taking that very specific example of the knee drop, one of the things that we do is we lengthen the lever, which demands so much stability. So if we take a sledgehammer, for example, and they can squat well with the knees driving out with a sledgehammer, then we'll put a mace, so it's going to be longer and heavier. Does it still happen with the mace? Great. If we take and put a bumper plate in their hands, does it make the knee drive or knee drop better or worse? So what are we learning? We're learning that the stability is there, and it's either their mental ability to recruit it or some type of midline instability issue where they're just not able to recruit it if they don't have like 30 pounds on the end of a 3-foot handle. So one simple thing we do when people are having lifting issues that don't really look like physical issues is we tell them to panic the weight up. So that's a strategy that we apply on heavy days as well, and it's basically, weightlifters and powerlifters do it all the time, but you're bracing for long enough that your brain tells you have to lift. So if you're putting a fully braced body attached to weight, you're going to brace for a 3-1000, stop dead, and then lift the weight. And it's just shockingly a successful strategy. It's so simple, but people under-address their setup, and then they wonder why the lift doesn't work. And that's just something that it seems like you said, it seems basic and common sensey, but it isn't. And so if the mace and the hammer and the bumper plate are tricking the knees out, and then we put them back on a barbell, or we put them on whatever the implement is they're squatting, then we tell them, let's panic the weight up, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to work. If the knees drop with the hammer or the bumper plate or the mace, then we know we got to address what you said. Then we're addressing the legs themselves. Another thing we'll do is, something as simple as having people squat with a hip circle at a couple different spots on their legs. We'll identify the slingshot, Mark Bell's slingshot, the rubber bands. So if people can drive out, through that band, then we know that if they're not doing it with weight on them, it's in their brains, not in their bodies. Something else that we'll do is we'll put something heavy outside of each foot in their ideal squat position, and they have to manufacture tension to push those feet apart. If they can't, then we know again it's a leg issue and not a brain issue. Okay. So those are a couple ways, but
that's a huge dilemma, I think, for a lot of coaches. Is you're trying to cue somebody in to correct a problem in their movement, and you never really know if it's between the ears or between the hip and the knee.
Yep.
There's always kind of that's a clever way of isolating those things.
You got to find out, because if it's in the brain and you go and do a bunch of diagnostics and people complain for months about their weights going down and it drives you crazy watching their knees drop in, and the whole time it was just a matter of making them aware of the fact that they are strong enough to drive their knees out. Then that's a lot of wasted time,
Yeah.
But again, back to the positional diagnostics, back to the intro, that kind of needs to get identified before an athlete trains in a group class, in our opinion.
For sure.
So the curriculum priorities that we teach, obviously squats are in there, weighted squats are in there, a variety of weighted squats, both a goblet squat and a kettlebell front squat, and then barbell front and back squat. So if there's a hole in the boat, we find it before they get put under heavy load and a bunch of pressure.
Is there a lot of what you're using is a trained coach's eye, those soft skills that you have from being, from having watched tens of thousands of reps from hundreds and dozens of hundreds of other athletes, are those soft skills something that you can actively teach, or does someone, in your opinion, have them or not?
Oh, man, so you're good at this, which is awesome. Yeah, yes, they're teachable. The problem, I think, in teaching a lot of it is coaches with good intuition on this stuff aren't always good at conveying it to other coaches. So when we develop a system, or when we develop something like we just talked about, which is a kind of a series of tests or diagnostics for a certain movement, anyone that's going to be teaching people in our environment, we only have a few coaches at Wolf Brigade. They all watch that unfold and then are able to apply it with their own people. So we don't complicate things for the sake of itself. We really just want the basic movement patterns to work as well as they can. So the soft skills are important, but the nice thing is there's a very finite amount of them that are needed to get a movement to work the way it's supposed to work. The fundamental movement patterns are not, by nature, complicated ones. I mean, even things that look a lot different to many people, like maces and some of the things we do with the kettlebells, if you really start looking at it, it's very simple positioning. There's nothing that exists there that isn't in other things. It's just applied a little bit differently and maybe addressed with a little more detail. But so the soft skills are crucial, but the ability to pass them on is as, if not more important. And then how they're received will determine, in my opinion, if a coach is going to be okay, good, or great.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of the difference between and it's a really odd analogy, but I make it all the time. The difference between a really good Mexican restaurant and a really terrible Mexican restaurant. They're all using the same 10 ingredients, right? Everything you get on a menu at a Mexican place is made with the same 10 ingredients, but it's the order that they're put in, and how well those ingredients are executed that makes the difference between you spending the rest of the night in the bathroom and writing a rave review on Yelp is kind of
it resonates because I was in Southern California for 10 years and now I'm in Rochester, New York.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went from Yuma, Arizona to Fayetteville, North Carolina last year, and you want to talk about culture shock?
No, that's yeah. Yep. That's probably as different, if not more, than California to upstate.
Yeah. Are there movements that are on your no-fly list? You obviously have a whole plethora of different things that you will do. Are there things that you just have no use for?
Yeah. I mean, man, that's a broad statement. No use for is big. Things that we don't use in group training: barbell snatch, kipping.
Any kind of kipping for anything? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yep. I mean, those are the two main ones. Barbell snatch. I mean, I don't want anyone to take me the wrong way. Phenomenal movement. The Olympic barbell snatch is something I can watch done well all day, every day, forever.
Yeah, that's about 3/4 of my Instagram feed is just people snatching.
Yeah, that's it. And so realistically, if someone is going to compete in CrossFit, it's something that we can detail out and teach well, and that's fine. I don't think it has a place in general group training. So that's part of the reason that something like the kettlebell full range high pull came into play, because I mean, of course, ground to overhead is a useful range of motion, but there are so many moving pieces in a barbell snatch. Even a barbell power snatch, we would never teach a full snatch in group class, even less so than we would teach a power snatch or a hang power snatch. But I just feel that the price is not worth the cost on things like barbell snatch and things like kipping. When we get an athlete that needs to adapt for a PT test in the military or law enforcement, or has gotten to a level of strength and conditioning where they can do whatever they want anytime they want, then add whatever you want to add. Another adjustment that we like is kicking versus kipping. So you're still moving in a straight plane of motion from a good hollow body, and using your low body to assist the pull-up, but you're not getting into like a gigantic, goofy, wiggly, internally rotated arch. As far as no flies, I think those are the only two I can really think of. Oh, wall ball we tossed, maybe in 2009. Done perfectly, great. Done anything less than perfectly, totally coverable with other stuff, and not ideal.
That's kind of an unusual. That is not a normal thing for people to mention on movements they don't like. That's what's the major flaw in the wall ball for that you found?
I mean, maybe we just sucked at teaching it, but I just really kind of saw that even when people were doing it well, it broke them into a position that they wouldn't use for anything else. It's this head up, really narrow hands, ass back squat because you're navigating, a bunch of factors that you're not going to see every day. Which I guess in some argument could be made that that's the value there. But I feel we can skin that cat with other things. You've got broad jump, straight jump, weighted straight jumps, push presses, wall ball substitute with a kettlebell is something that we do that I think is a very effective positional correlate there that keeps you in a better squat hinge.
To be clear, you're not talking about throwing kettlebells against the wall. That's frowned on in most establishments.
No. I'll send you what I mean. It may even be on your site. But anyway, I'll find it. But anyway, and I mean, wall ball is light enough where people aren't going to get hurt anyway. But realistically, we would also see people just wanting to do so many of them that even if you're doing them well, they break down to the point where there's just better ways to skin that cat.
Right.
And if we're going to squat, I want to squat. If we're going to push press, I want to push press. When we combine them, I want it to be intelligent. I don't want it to be just for the sake of combining them.
Right.
Good stuff. Just our preference.
Well, I've taken way more of your time than I had bargained on, but you had so many good things to say. I just wanted to keep listening. So.
I'm so glad for this. I love it. I mean, OMID has been so great, and I love your site, and I love how general it is, but I also sometimes really just kind of want to make sure that there's enough stuff up there that lets the people that need it the most understand that they have access to the best possible strength and conditioning without having to put themselves in the ground every single day for 40 or 50 minutes. And if you can't do, whatever certain coaches are prescribing, air quotes, prescribing for the day, that is not a demotion. That you're still making progress as long as you're working hard once that scaling is made. That's the stuff that I feel that we offer a little differently than anyone else, and that I'm really pleased to be able to offer on Breaking Muscle is mostly just mindset stuff, and then the positional adaptations we make, and then, like I said, our kettlebell lifting adaptations, they make some purists angry because we've changed hand positions on some things, and we've kind of flipped the script on what you would use a kettlebell for. But it's all got reason and theory and practice behind it, and I will apply and prove that on any athlete in the world anytime. And then the mace stuff is in my opinion, man, is just yet to hit. I think that once people get their hands on heavy enough mace lifting, you're going to see it everywhere.
Absolutely. And I get a big kick out of making the kettlebell purists mad anyway, so we're always a big fan of that.
we don't, man. We don't. We just the evolutionary process cannot stop.
Right.
If it stops, it's called something else. So yeah, we just gotta keep going.
They're just so easy to get a rise out of. It's kind of fun. Anyway, I am Pete Hitzman. You're Greg Walsh. Look him up on breakingmuscle.com/coaches.
Thank you so much for listening, guys, too. Any questions, please get at us.
And you can find him on Facebook at Wolf Brigade. Are you on Instagram as well?
Instagram, Wolf Brigade Gym. Instagram is probably our strongest day-to-day offering. Instagram is Wolf Brigade Gym.
Great. Thanks very much, Greg, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thank you.
Yep. See you.